In this video, I will show you how to make this exact simulation in Blender using the Flip Fluids add-on. It's going to be quick and easy, so let's get started. Okay, so let's start off by pressing S to scale up the cube. And this is going to be our domain, which is the border of the simulation. Press numpad 1 for front view, and then we can go into the physics settings, enable Flip Fluid, and then set the type to domain. And then we need to save in order to bake later. So just give it a name, save it where we want on the computer. And then next, we're going to increase the resolution as well. So let's set it to 120, which looks okay. And then press Shift D to duplicate, and then S, then set to scale the duplication on the Z axis. And then press G, then set to grab it on the Z axis. And this is going to be the water in the simulation. So for this object, we can change the type from domain to fluid. Next, we can add a circle curve, which we can add some force to give the water some life. So go to curve, then circle, and then we can press numpad 7 for a top view, and then press S to scale. And then we can press G, then set to grab it on the Z axis. And then next, we need to add some force to the curve. So add the Flip Fluids physics, force field, and then I'm going to increase the value for flow strength and spin strength, so that will make the water start spinning around the domain. Okay, and then you can press Ctrl Shift S to create a new save, just in case something crashes. And then we can do a test bake. So let's increase the resolution for the preview as well, so that we can see the result right away. And then after some time of baking, I'm going to pause the simulation. It's much slower in real life. I just sped up the recording. As you can see, we now have the spinning simulation. So let's save one more time. And now we can start adding the materials, the lighting, and so on. To make the render look a bit more interesting, I'm going to press Shift A and add an icosphere. And use these as lights with some color. So press G to grab, S to scale, and then press Ctrl 3 to add some subdivisions to the sphere. And then to turn it into a light, we need to add a material and set it to emission. And then I'm going to set the strength to 100 and make it blue. You can of course change these values later if you want to. And then we can also add a background image. I'm just going to add the one I usually use. You can find free HDRIs in the description. These are just background images to get some light into the scene. Okay, and then we turn the water into glass and set the IOR to 1.333, which is the value of water. And then when we go into render view, and then switch to cycles, and if you have a GPU, make sure to use it. If not, just keep using the CPU. As you can see, we can now see the light. And then next, I'm just going to add a plane. I sped up this part because I'm sure you know how to do this. It's just simply adding a plane and adding a gloss material to that plane. S to scale. Let's make it a bit darker. And you just play around with the different values until you have a result that you like. We can also increase the strength of the sun if you want to make the water a bit more visible. And then we can press S to scale up the light. Just add the size that you want. And then next we can press numpad 7 for top view, and then Shift D to duplicate. And then copy the material, and then you can change the color. And then Shift D once again. And let's make this one red. Now to set up the camera, we can press Ctrl Alt Numpad 0 to set it to the current point of view. And then I'm going to make it square and press N and then set the camera to view so that the camera follows your point of view. I'm also going to scale up the plane, and then you can select the light and press R twice to rotate the light freely. Okay, so I think this looks nice. I'm just tweaking some of the values. Doesn't really matter that much. It's up to you how you want it to look. Okay, so I think this looks nice. Now, if you want the simulation to look even better, you can bake the simulation once again and set it at a higher resolution. But keep in mind that this is going to take a long time. At least for me, it took the whole night to bake it at a 250 resolution. Under the more bake settings, you can also increase the duration of the simulation. Let's make it 300 frames. And then we can save before we start to bake in case something crashes. Also try to make sure that you have enough space for the bake, because it's going to take up a lot of space on your hard drive. Okay, and once the simulation is done, you need to select a folder for the render outputs. I'm just going to create a new folder, give it a name. And then we can do a test render. So go to render and then render image. And from that render, you can get an idea of how many samples you need for the render. And I think 1000 is enough, especially with some denoising. So I'm going to set max samples to 1000. And then we can start rendering the whole simulation. Go to render and then render animation. And that's it for this tutorial. If you like simulation tutorials for Blender, make sure to subscribe, because there are more tutorials coming very soon.